Detective Jamal Carter sat in a stark Atlanta interrogation room, wrists raw from cuffs, his badge gone, labeled a suspect in his own precinct. That morning, a coffee run turned brutal when a racist cop ignored his badge, slamming him down. A respected detective hours ago, now he faced betrayal. His trust in justice shattered. This arrest wasn't a mistake. It launched a conspiracy threatening his family, career, everything. What unraveling plot landed him here? Before we dive in, let me know where you're watching from. And if you stand for justice, hit like and subscribe because tomorrow's episode is unmissable. The sun hadn't yet burned off the morning haze in Atlanta when Jamal Carter eased his sedan to a stop outside Malcolm X Elementary. His son, Malik, 11 years old and all elbows, fumbled with his backpack in the passenger seat, muttering about basketball tryouts. Jamal grinned, the kind of smile that creased his eyes after 15 years of long shifts and longer nights as a detective. "You gonna dunk on those kids today or what?" he teased, ruffling Malik's hair. Malik rolled his eyes but couldn't hide his smirk. "Only if you show up to watch, Dad," he shot back, hopping out. Jamal leaned over the console, voice firm but warm. "I'll be there, promise." Malik gave a quick nod, slung his bag over one shoulder, and jogged toward the school's glass doors, sneakers squeaking on the pavement. Jamal watched him disappear into the crowd of kids, a fleeting pang in his chest. Promises were sacred, especially with Malik. He'd missed too many games already, buried in case files or Jingdian. The sedan's engine hummed as Jamal pulled away, the city waking up around him. Atlanta in April 2025 was a sprawl of contradictions. Gleaming skyscrapers downtown, historic black neighborhoods thriving with culture, and pockets of tension simmering in the suburbs. Jamal, 38, navigated it all with a quiet confidence. 15 years with the Atlanta Police Department had honed his instincts, earned him respect. He wasn't just good, he was the guy rookies shadowed to learn how to read a room, defuse. A standoff with a steady voice. Close cases others called hopeless. His commendations hung framed in his office, right next to photos of Malik and his wife Aisha, laughing at a barbecue. He swung by a coffee shop on Peachtree Street, the kind with exposed brick and baristas who knew his order. Black, no sugar. Standing in line, he caught a snippet of conversation from two guys in construction vests, their voices low but sharp. "Big deal going down tonight," one muttered, glancing around. "Suburb off Roswell Road. White house, blue shutters." Jamal's ears pricked. He didn't look up from his phone, just sipped his coffee, memorizing every word. The guys left and he filed it away. A lead like that, from one of his oldest informants, didn't come often. If it was real, it could crack open a case he'd been chasing for months, a drug ring bleeding into the city's north side. He drove toward the suburbs, the skyline fading in his rear view. Roswell Road stretched into a quiet, tree-lined area, the houses big, the lawns manicured. This wasn't his usual beat, but he knew it well enough. Predominantly white, the kind of place where a black man in a sedan might draw a glance or two. He wore jeans, a navy jacket, his badge clipped to his belt, visible if anyone looked close. His service weapon sat holstered under his arm, standard for plainclothes work. He wasn't looking for trouble, just answers. The address wasn't hard to find. A white house with blue shutters tucked at the end of a cul-de-sac. Kids rode bikes a block away, their laughter faint. Jamal parked along the curb, engine off, notebook in hand. He scanned the street, eyes sharp for anything off, a car idling too long, a curtain twitching. Nothing. Just the still tension of a stakeout, the kind that made his pulse steady, focused. He jotted a note, checked his watch. 10 minutes in, he felt the air shift. A patrol car rolled up behind him, slow, deliberate. Jamal caught it in his side mirror, headlights bright even in daylight. His first thought was routine. Maybe a neighbor called, spooked by an unfamiliar car. It happened. He'd flash his badge, explain he was working a lead, be on his way. The cruiser stopped, blocking him in. A knot formed in his gut. Not panic, just instinct. He kept his hands on the wheel, visible textbook. The driver's door opened and an officer stepped out, white mid-40s, broad shoulders, buzz cut, His nameplate read Hensley, and his hand hovered near his holster, posture rigid like he was coiled for a fight. Jamal clocked the details. No partner, no radio chatter. Unusual for a routine check. Hensley approached, boots heavy on the asphalt, eyes locked on Jamal like he was sizing up a threat. "Step out of the vehicle," Hensley barked, voice flat. No room for discussion. Jamal's brow furrowed, surprise flickering. He kept his hands still, voice calm. "Officer, I'm Detective Jamal. Carter, Atlanta PD. I'm on duty, working a lead. My badge is right here, left side, clipped to my belt." Hensley didn't blink, didn't glance at the badge glinting in the sun. "Out. Now. Hands where I can see them." The knot in Jamal's gut tightened. This wasn't right. He'd been mistaken for a civilian before, sure, once in college, a couple times early in his career. But this? The edge in Hensley's voice, the way his fingers twitched near his gun, it felt personal. Jamal eased the window down, slow, deliberate, showing empty palms. "I'm identifying myself clearly. Detective Carter, badge on my belt. I'm not a threat." Hensley's gun was out now, drawn faster than Jamal expected, barrel aimed at his chest. "Don't move. Don't you dare move." His voice was a growl, low and mean. Time slowed, the world narrowing to that muzzle. Jamal's heart thudded, but he kept his hands raised out the window, open, trembling just enough to notice. Neighbors were watching now. A woman across the street clutched her phone, filming. A man in a golf shirt froze on his lawn, mouth open. Kids' bikes clattered to the ground, forgotten. Jamal's mind raced, training kicking in. "Stay calm, don't escalate, survive." "Officer, please," he said, voice steady despite the adrenaline. "I'm one of you, my ID's right there, just look." Hensley's eyes flicked to the badge for a split second, then back to Jamal's face, narrowing. "You don't belong here," he spat. Stepping closer, gun steady. The words hit like a slap, raw, deliberate. Jamal's jaw clenched, realization dawning. This wasn't a mix-up. This was about his skin, his presence in this neighborhood, his existence. Before Jamal could speak again, Hensley yanked the door open, one hand gripping the gun, the other reaching for him. Jamal braced, keeping his hands up, but Hensley was fast, brutal. He grabbed Jamal's collar, jerked him out, slamming him chest first against the sedan's hood. The metal burned hot against his skin, air rushing from his lungs. Jamal's arm twisted behind him, pain searing as Hensley wrenched it high, popping his shoulder. He grunted, biting back a yell, tasting copper where his lips split. Cuffs snapped on, cold and tight, pinching his wrists. Hensley leaned in, breath hot on Jamal's. "Here? Should have stayed downtown, boy," he hissed, shoving harder. The badge dangled from Jamal's belt, ignored, useless. Jamal's cheek scraped the hood, gravel biting his skin. He heard the woman gasp, saw the man on the lawn take a step back, phone raised now too. More headlights flashed, another cruiser. Pulling up, lights spinning, sirens off, back up. Jamal's hope flared, faint but real. They'd see his badge, sort this out. He tried again, voice hoarse. "I'm Detective Carter, check my ID, I'm working a case." Hensley didn't flinch, just tightened the cuffs until Jamal's fingers numbed. "You're nobody," he said, low, final. He radioed in, voice clipped. "Got a suspect resisting arrest, need transport." Resisting. Jamal's stomach dropped. He hadn't moved, hadn't fought. His hands were still raised when they pulled him out. Empty, compliant. The second cruiser's door opened. Another officer stepping out, younger, eyes darting between Hensley and Jamal. He didn't speak, just stood by, hand on his belt. Jamal locked eyes with him, pleading silently, but the guy looked away, jaw tight. Hensley hauled Jamal upright, shoving him toward the first cruiser. The crowd grew. 5, 6 neighbors now, phones out, whispering. Jamal's legs shook, not from fear but rage, burning deep. He'd faced down gang leaders, talked jumpers off ledges. But this? A cop, one of his own, treating him like dirt. Ignoring the badge he'd earned? It cut deeper than the cuffs. "You're making a mistake," Jamal said, voice breaking, not with weakness but fury. "I'm a detective. You didn't even check." Hensley smirked, shoving him against the cruisers. "Door." "Keep talking," he said, "and it'll get worse." The door slammed open and Jamal stumbled, catching himself before he fell inside. The badge swung on his belt, catching the light, a silent scream no one heard. As Hensley pushed him into the back seat, Jamal's mind spun. Malik's game was tonight. Aisha was expecting him home, he'd promised. Now he was cuffed, bleeding, a gun still trained on him, all because he dared to do his job in the wrong zip code. The door slammed shut, the sound echoing like a gunshot. Through the window, he saw Hensley radio again, heard the crackle of static. The words "suspect in custody." Jamal leaned back, shoulder throbbing, blood trickling down his chin. This wasn't over. It couldn't be. Someone would check his badge, call the precinct, fix this. He clung to that, even as Hensley's words rang in his head. You don't belong here. They weren't just about the street. They were about him, his life, his place in a world that saw his skin before his rank. The cruiser rolled forward, and Jamal stared out, the White House with blue shutters fading behind him, a lead he'd never chase, a morning he'd never forget. The precinct smelled of stale coffee and disinfectant, a familiar sting in Jamal Carter's nostrils as he sat in the holding area, wrists still raw from Lieutenant Victor Hensley's cuffs. The fluorescent lights buzzed overhead, casting stark shadows on the concrete floor. His shoulder ached, a dull throb where Hensley had twisted it, and his split lips stung with every breath. The badge that should have been his shield was now locked in an evidence bag somewhere, out of reach. Jamal leaned back against the cold wall, forcing himself to stay calm. This was a mistake, a bad one, but mistakes got fixed. He'd been with the Atlanta Police Department for 15 years, closed cases that made headlines, mentored rookies who still texted him for advice. Someone would walk through that door, apologize, hand him his badge, and this nightmare would end. Wouldn't it? Footsteps echoed down the hall, sharp and purposeful. Detective Sarah Nguyen appeared, her ponytail swinging, eyes wide with disbelief. Jamal, what the hell happened? She said, voice low, glancing at the officer guarding the door. Sarah was solid, a friend from late-night stakeouts, someone who'd laughed at his terrible puns over precinct pizza. He exhaled, relief loosening his chest. Got jumped by a cop who didn't check my badge, he said, keeping it short. Hensley, out on Roswell Road, thought I was a suspect. Sarah's jaw tightened and she nodded to the guard who stepped aside. Come on, let's get you out of here, she said, motioning him up. The cuffs came off, metal clinking, and Jamal rubbed his wrists, wincing at the red welts. Sarah led him to a break room, empty except for a vending machine humming in the corner. She shut the door, leaned against it. I heard the call come in, she said. Resisting arrest, suspicious vehicle. I knew it was garbage when they said your name. I told Captain Morris you're one of us. Jamal nodded, grateful but uneasy. The captain's a straight shooter, right? He asked, half expecting her to laugh, confirm it. Instead, Sarah hesitated, her gaze flicking to the floor. He's under pressure, she said finally. Optics, you know. But he's pulling your file now, should clear up soon. Optics. The word landed like a stone. Jamal forced a smile, clinging to the hope that his record would speak for him. 15 years, no infractions, commendations stacked high. He pictured Malik's basketball game tonight, Aisha's smile when he walked through the door. He'd make it home. He had to. Sarah clapped his shoulder, gentle but firm. Sit tight. Okay, I'll push this through. She left and Jamal sank into a chair, the clock on the wall ticking too slow. Could his own precinct really let this slide? An hour later, Captain Morris called him into his office. The man was graying, stern, with a desk buried under paperwork. Jamal stood tall, badge or no badge, expecting clarity. Instead, Morris slid a report across the desk, his face unreadable. Hensley's claiming you swung at him, Carter, he said. Voice flat. Says you refused to identify, resisted when he tried to detain you. Got a body cam clip backing it up. Jamal's blood ran cold. That's a lie, he said, voice steady but sharp. I told him I was a detective. Showed my hands badge. Right there. He never looked. Morris leaned back, rubbing his temples. The clip's grainy, but it shows a scuffle. Looks bad. Jamal's mind reeled. A scuffle? He'd been slammed down, hadn't lifted a finger. This wasn't sloppy police work. It was a setup. Captain, you know me, he said, leaning forward. "I've been here 15 years. Check my badge log, my case files. I was working a lead." Morris sighed heavy like he was carrying the precinct's weight. "I want to believe you, Jamal," he said, "but upstairs is breathing down my neck. Public's already sniffing around, phones were out there. Until we sort this, you're on administrative leave. Effective now." "Leave?" Jamal's stomach twisted, rage and disbelief colliding. "You're suspending me for being assaulted?" he asked, voice rising despite himself. Morris raised a hand, weary. "It's temporary, Carter. Standard procedure. Go home, stay low. We'll handle it." Jamal stared at him. The man who'd pinned a commendation on his chest 2 years ago, now looking through him. Procedure. The word tasted like ash. He turned, jaw clenched, and walked out, the precinct's hum fading behind him. Was his career really slipping through his fingers this easily? He drove home, the city a blur of red lights and honking horns. His phone stayed silent. No texts. From Sarah, no calls from the captain. Just Malik's game at 7. A promise he still meant to keep. He pulled into his driveway, a modest 2-story in a black neighborhood where kids played tag and neighbors waved. But something was wrong. The front door hung ajar, paint cans scattered on the porch. Jamal's heart sank as he stepped closer, the air thick with the stench of spray paint. Across his white siding, in jagged red letters, was a racial slur, ugly and raw, stretching 10 feet wide. Windows were smashed, glass glinting on the lawn. Inside, furniture was overturned, family photos slashed, Malik's basketball trophy snapped in half. Jamal's knees buckled, not from the damage but the violation. This was his home, his sanctuary, where Aisha baked cornbread on Sundays, where Malik practiced free throws in the driveway. He stumbled through the wreckage, glass crunching under his boots, and found a note taped to the fridge written in block letters, "Stop snooping or your kid pays." His breath caught, Malik's face flashing in his mind. The threat wasn't abstract. It was personal, targeted, a blade aimed at his heart. Who could have known he was digging into that drug lead? He called Aisha, voice shaking as he told her to pick Malik up from school, stay at her sister's. "Don't come home," he said, hating. And a fear in his own words. She didn't argue, just said, "Be careful, Jamal," her voice tight with worry. He sank onto the porch steps, staring at the slur defacing his house, the note burning in his pocket. Hensley's face loomed in his mind, those cold eyes, that smirk. This wasn't just one cop's prejudice. Someone bigger was pulling strings, someone who knew Jamal's moves, his family. His suspension was supposed to silence him, but this was war. Had he underestimated how far they'd go to break him? The neighborhood was quiet now, dusk settling, streetlights flickering on. Jamal's hands trembled, not with fear but fury. A fire he hadn't felt since his rookie days, facing down men who thought they owned the streets. He'd been naive, thinking a badge meant protection, that his precinct would have his back. Now his home was a crime scene, his son a target, his career hanging by a thread. He stood brushing glass off his jeans, the note crumpling in his fist. He'd clear his name, protect his family, find out who was behind this. But at what cost? If you're outraged that Jamal's own precinct turned on him, comment number 1, hit like and subscribe to see justice fought for. What happens when the truth starts to surface, only to pull Jamal into a deeper trap? The Atlanta night buzzed with unrest, humid air thick with the scent of asphalt and tension. Jamal Carter stood on his porch, the racial slur still screaming across his house in red paint, now faintly lit by a street lamp. Glass crunched under. His boots as he scanned the empty street. The note threatening Malik burned into his memory. His phone vibrated. Aisha's text confirming she and Malik were safe at her sister's. "Stay put," he typed back, fingers stiff. He couldn't go to them, not yet. The vandalism wasn't random. It was a message tied to Lieutenant Victor Hensley's arrest, to that drug lead he'd chased on Roswell Road. Someone wanted him scared, silent. But Jamal wasn't built to back down. By morning the video hit. A neighbor's shaky footage of his arrest, Hensley slamming him against the sedan, badge glinting, ignored, spread across social media like wildfire. It racked up 10,000 views in an hour, 20,000 by noon. Comments poured in, raw and furious. This is a detective. They didn't even check. Atlanta PD's a disgrace. Jamal watched it on his phone, parked in a lot miles from home, stomach churning. His face was everywhere, bloodied lip and all. A symbol he hadn't asked to be. Protesters gathered outside the precinct by afternoon, signs scrawled with justice for Carter, their chants echoing through downtown. Part of him felt a spark. Maybe this was the push to clear his name. But the spark flickered. He knew crowds could turn and truth could twist. He spent the day digging into Hensley, using a burner phone to call old contacts. A retired sergeant, voice gravelly from years of chain smoking, spilled what Jamal suspected. Hensley had a file thick with complaints, excessive force racial profiling, all buried by the department. Never stuck, the sergeant said. Guys got friends upstairs. Jamal's jaw clenched. Friends who'd fake a body cam clip, suspend him without a fight, maybe even send someone to trash his house. He needed more, something solid to nail Hensley, to protect Malik and Aisha. The precinct wasn't safe, not with his badge locked away, his career dangling by a thread. He'd have to move fast, alone. A community meeting was set for that evening, organized by a local activist group at a rec center in Jamal's neighborhood. Aisha called, voice steady but urgent. "They're asking for you, Jamal. People are angry. You should speak." He hesitated, picturing Malik's trophy snapped in half, that note's threat. But staying silent felt like surrender. If he could rally, support show he was still a detective, not a suspect. Maybe he could turn the tide. "I'll go," he said, checking his watch. 6 o'clock, an hour before Malik's game. He'd make it work. The rec center was packed, air heavy with sweat and murmurs. Folding chairs lined the gym, filled with neighbors, churchgoers, kids clutching their parents' hands. Jamal stood at the back, cap low, scanning faces. Most were familiar. Mrs. Ellis from across the street, who baked him peach cobbler every Christmas. Dion, the barber who cut Malik's hair. But there were strangers too, eyes sharp, phones out. He spotted Sarah Nguyen near the front, her detective badge tucked under her jacket, a nod of encouragement when their eyes met. The organizer, a woman with a megaphone named Tanya, called for quiet. "We're here for Jamal Carter," she shouted, voice fierce. "A black detective, one of us, beaten and cuffed for doing his job. We demand answers." The crowd roared, fists raised, and Jamal's chest tightened. Tanya gestured him forward, and he stepped to the mic, heart pounding. The gym fell silent, every eye on him. He cleared his throat, voice low but steady. "I've served this city 15 years, he began. "Yesterday I was working a lead badge on my belt when an officer arrested me. Didn't check who I was, didn't care." The crowd murmured, anger rippling. "I'm not here to point fingers," he continued, though Hensley's smirk flashed in his mind. "I'm here to say I'm still fighting, for my family, for justice, for all of us." Applause erupted, loud enough to shake the rafters. Jamal exhaled, hope creeping in. Maybe this was his chance, a way to push back, expose Hensley. He stepped back, nodding to Tanya, when a voice cut through the noise. A man in a hoodie, face shadowed, stood near the exit. "He's lying," the man yelled, pointing at Jamal. "That badge was fake. He's no cop, just stirring trouble." The room froze, then exploded. Gasps turned to shouts, confusion spreading. Jamal's blood ran cold. Fake? He'd bled for that badge, earned it through years of 16-hour shifts, cases that kept him up at night. Tanya raised her hands, trying to calm the crowd, but the man kept shouting. "I saw him, he's scamming you all." People turned, some nodding, others glaring at Jamal like he'd betrayed them. Sarah pushed through, whispering, "Stay calm, I've got this," but the damage was done. The man bolted for the door, and Jamal's instincts kicked in. He chased, weaving through the crowd, ignoring Sarah's shout to stop. Outside, the man vanished into an alley, but the chaos followed. The crowd spilled onto the street, voices clashing, some defending Jamal, others echoing the lie. A bottle shattered against the pavement, then another. Sirens wailed, close, too close. Jamal froze, heart sinking. This wasn't a meeting anymore, it was a riot. Police vans screeched up, lights flashing, officers in riot gear pouring out. The crowd surged, some running, others standing defiant. Jamal backed toward the rec center, searching for Sarah when a hand grabbed his arm. an officer, face hidden behind a visor. "You're coming with us," the officer growled, yanking him toward a van. Jamal twisted, voice sharp. "I'm Detective Carter, I didn't start this." But the officer didn't listen, shoving him harder. His badge wasn't here, his name was Mudd, and the lie about a fake badge had spread like poison. The van's doors loomed, black and cold. Jamal's mind raced. Malik's game, Aisha's voice, the note threatening his son. He'd come to clear his name, rally his people, but someone had turned it against him. Hensley? The man in the hoodie wasn't random, he was planted, a spark to ignite this chaos. Jamal stumbled, the officer's grip bruising as protesters shouted, some throwing rocks now. Batons swung, tear gas hissed, and the crowd scattered. But not before phones caught it all. Jamal, cuffed again, dragged to the van like a criminal. Inside, the doors slammed shut, muffling the screams outside. Jamal sat on a metal bench, hands bound, the van lurching forward. 2 officers sat across from him, silent, visors up now. One smirked, a glint of recognition in his eyes. Hensley's precinct, no doubt. "You really thought you'd talk your way out?" the officer said, voice low, mocking. Jamal didn't answer, rage burning through his fear. The meeting was supposed to be his stand, his moment to fight back. Instead, it was a trap, and he'd walked right in. The van hit a pothole, jarring his bruised shoulder, and he winced, picturing Malik's face, Aisha's worry. He'd promised to protect them, to be at that game. Now he was headed back to a cell, maybe worse, with a lie about his badge spreading faster than the truth. Hensley wasn't just one cop anymore. He was a force, connected, ruthless, turning Jamal's own community against him. The slur on his house, the note, this riot, they weren't accidents. They were moves in a game Jamal hadn't seen coming. He leaned back, the cuffs biting his wrists, and forced his breathing to slow. He wasn't done. He'd find that man in the hoodie, trace the lie, expose Hensley's dirt. The precinct hadn't backed him, the captain hadn't fought for him, and now his neighbors doubted him. But Malik and Aisha were waiting, and that was enough to keep him sharp. The van rolled on, sirens fading, the city a blur through a slit of a window. Jamal's eyes narrowed, resolve hardening. Whoever set this up thought they'd broken him. They were wrong. The Atlanta morning was grey, clouds heavy with the threat of rain. As Jamal Carter stepped out of the courthouse, wrists free but his heart caged. Released on bail after the riot, he stood on the steps, the city's pulse humming around him. Cars, honking, pedestrians rushing, life moving on while his unraveled. The community meeting's chaos replayed in his mind. The hooded man's lie about a fake badge, the crowd's doubt, the police van swallowing him whole. His phone buzzed. Aisha, checking in, her voice a lifeline. "Malik's safe," she said. "But you need to rest." Rest? Jamal almost laughed. Rest was a luxury he couldn't afford, not with Lieutenant Victor Hensley's shadow looming, not with his home vandalized, his name slandered. The slur painted on his house, the note threatening his son, the precinct's silence. It all pointed to a truth he couldn't ignore. Hensley wasn't acting alone. Someone bigger was pulling strings, and Jamal needed answers now. Could he trust anyone to help him find them? He caught a bus to a diner miles from the precinct, a hole in the wall where grease hung in the air and the coffee burned your throat. Sitting in a corner booth, he opened his burner phone, scrolling through messages from old informants. The viral video of his arrest had hit 1 million views, protests still flaring outside the precinct, but it wasn't enough. Hensley's doctored body cam clip and the riot's fallout had painted Jamal as a troublemaker, maybe worse. He needed leverage, something to crack Hensley's armor. A text came through from Dion, his barber, who'd been at the meeting. "Heard something weird," Dion wrote. "Check your precinct files." Sarah's been asking questions. Sarah Nguyen. Jamal's stomach twisted. She'd vouched for him after the arrest, pushed to get his cuffs off, but her hesitation in the break room nagged at him. Had she known more than she let on? He typed a reply, keeping it vague, then pocketed the phone. The diner's bell jingled, and he glanced up, half expecting trouble, but it was just a delivery guy. Paranoia was settling in, a weight he couldn't shake. He paid for his coffee, left the diner, and headed to a library, a quiet spot to dig without eyes on him. Using a public computer, he hacked into an old precinct database, skills from his early days chasing cybercrimes. Hensley's file was locked tight, but a disciplinary log caught his eye. 3 complaints in 2 years, all dismissed, all involving black suspects, buried, just like the sergeant said. But there was more. A transfer request from Sarah, flagged as denied, dated a week ago. Why was she trying to leave? Jamal's burner buzzed again, this time a call. He answered, voice low. Yeah? It was Dion, whispering, like he was scared of being overheard. Man, I shouldn't be telling you this, Dion said. Sarah was in my shop yesterday, asking about you, your cases. Said she had to give some notes to Hensley. Felt off, Jamal, real off. The line went dead before Jamal could ask more. His pulse quickened, betrayal sinking in like a blade. Sarah, his friend, the one who'd stood by him, or so he thought. Had she been playing him all along? He left the library, mind racing, and caught a cab to his sister-in-law's place where Aisha and Malik waited. Aisha hugged him tight, Malik clinging to his side, but he couldn't relax. Sarah's questions, Hensley's reach. It was closing in. If you're stunned that even Jamal's allies might turn on him, comment number 1, hit like and subscribe to see how deep this betrayal goes. He couldn't wait for answers to fall in his lap. That night, against Aisha's pleas, Jamal slipped out, dressed in a hoodie, no badge, no gun, just instinct and rage. The drug led from the coffee shop. The White House with blue shutters was still his only thread. If Hensley was dirty, it tied to that deal. He took a bus to an industrial park north of the city, where warehouses squatted under flickering streetlights. The air smelled of oil and rust, the kind of place where deals went down and bodies vanished. He'd tracked a tip from another informant, a junkie who swore the cartel operated here, guarded by cops. Jamal crouched behind a dumpster, watching a warehouse with a sagging roof, its windows blacked out. A black SUV rolled up, and out stepped Hensley, his buzz cut unmistakable in the moonlight. Another man joined him, wiry, in a suit, cartel, no question. They spoke low, heads close, then shook hands. Jamal's blood pounded. This was it. Proof Hensley wasn't just a racist cop, but a traitor to the badge. He edged closer, phone out, recording audio, praying for something clear. Hensley's voice carried, clipped and cold. Shipment's on schedule, he said. Carter's out of the picture, don't worry. The suit guy laughed. Better stay that way. Jamal's grip tightened, his name a punch to the gut. They knew he'd been sniffing around, and this was their fix. Frame him, ruin him, maybe worse. He leaned in, desperate for more, when a twig snapped under his boot. The men froze, heads snapping toward him. Jamal ducked, heart slamming, but it was too late. Flashlights cut through the dark and shouts erupted. Get him! He ran, legs burning, weaving between crates, the warehouse a maze of shadows. Footsteps pounded behind him, not just Hensley's, others, maybe 3, maybe 4. Cops, cartel, he couldn't tell, but they were fast, trained. A bullet grazed his sleeve, ripping fabric, and he dove behind a stack of pallets, breath ragged. His phone slipped, skittering across the concrete, the recording lost. No evidence, no leverage, just survival now. The men closed in, voices sharp, laughing like it was a hunt. There's our boy, one called, and Jamal recognized the drawl, Hensley's crew, loyal to the core. Could he outrun them, or was this the end? A fist caught his jaw, sudden, blinding, and he hit the ground, tasting blood. Boots followed, kicking his ribs, his back, pain exploding with every blow. He curled up, protecting his head, training, screaming to stay alive. They didn't shoot. Too messy, too loud. They wanted him broken, not dead, not yet. A voice hissed above him, close, venomous. You're done, Carter. Hands yanked him up, tossing him against a wall, and then he saw it. A baggie of white powder stuffed into his jacket pocket. Drugs planted, enough to lock him away for years. Hensley stepped into the light, smirking, his eyes cold as steel. Told you to stay out of my way, he said, nodding to the others. Take him in. The world spun, Jamal's vision blurring as they dragged him to a van, not a police one, just black, unmarked. He fought to stay conscious, Malik's face flashing, Aisha's voice calling him home. They threw him inside, doors slamming, and drove, the city's lights fading through a cracked window. Hours later, he couldn't tell how long, he woke in a hospital, cuffed to a bed, monitors beeping. A nurse hovered, avoiding his eyes, as an officer stood guard, radio crackling. "Possession with intent," the officer said, reading charges like a script. "Felony wait, Carter. You're looking at time." Jamal's throat burned, not from pain but fury. Possession. He'd never touched drugs, never would. The baggie was Hensley's. The ambush a setup, and Sarah. She'd fed them his moves, his case notes, everything. The hospital room felt like a tomb, sterile and cold. His career, his freedom, his family slipping away. He'd gone to that warehouse to fight back, to expose the truth, but they'd turned his own instincts against him. Hensley wasn't just a step ahead. He owned the board. If you're raging that Jamal's trust was weaponized against him, comment number 1, hit like and subscribe to see if he can claw his way back. The guard stepped out, leaving Jamal alone with the beep of machines and the weight of betrayal. He stared at the cuffs, the IV in his arm, the ceiling tiles blurring as pain meds dulled his senses. Malik's basketball game was last night. He'd missed it, broken another promise. Aisha didn't know where he was, couldn't visit, not with these charges. The precinct, Sarah, the community, they'd all turned or been turned by Hensley's lies. But he wasn't done. He'd find a way out, expose the cartel, protect his son. What happens when the only way to fight is to risk everything, even the ones you love? The hospital room was a cage of white walls and antiseptic stink, pinning Jamal Carter to a bed, with cuffs chaining him to the rail. His ribs screamed with every breath, bruised from the warehouse beating, and his jaw throbbed where a fist had split his skin. The drug charges, possession with intent, a felony lie planted by Lieutenant Victor H.D. Densley, hung over him like a noose, tightening with every tick of the clock. Atlanta's morning light seeped through a barred window, mocking his confinement. He'd gone to that warehouse to expose Hensley's cartel ties, to claw back his life, but instead, he'd lost everything. His badge, his freedom, his chance to see Malik's basketball game. Aisha's last call echoed in his mind, her voice steady but fraying. "Stay strong, Jamal. We're okay." Were they? He stared at the ceiling, the monitors beep a cruel metronome counting down to a trial he couldn't win. Aisha arrived by noon, her eyes red but fierce, slipping past the guard with a lawyer's note. She bailed him out, cash scraped from savings, her sister's help, and a loan that stung to think about. "You're coming home," she said, gripping his hand, her wedding ring cool against his bruised fingers. Home sounded like a dream, but the charges weren't dropped. Hensley's planted drugs ensured that. The guard uncuffed him, smirking as he handed Jamal a court date scribbled on a slip. "Don't skip town, Carter," he said, like Jamal was already guilty. Aisha drove him through Atlanta's sprawl, the city's heat shimmering off the asphalt, but Jamal barely saw it. His mind was on Malik, on the note from their vandalized house, "Stop snooping or your kid pays." Hensley wasn't bluffing, and now Jamal was a marked man, a detective turned fugitive in the eyes of a system that never saw his badge, only his skin. They pulled up to Aisha's sister's place, a small apartment in a quiet black neighborhood, where kids kicked a soccer ball down the street. Malik ran out, throwing his arms around Jamal, his skinny frame trembling. "You okay, Dad?" he asked, voice small, eyes searching for the father who'd promised to be at his game. Jamal hugged him tight, pain flaring in his ribs, but worth it for that moment. "I'm here," he said, forcing a smile. But the lie in his pocket, the drug charges, the precinct's betrayal, Sarah Nguyen's leaked notes, burned hotter than his injuries. He couldn't stay still, not with Hensley out there, not with that threat against his son. Inside, Aisha made coffee, her hands steady but her silence heavy. Malik sat close, clutching a basketball, asking questions Jamal dodged. "When's court?" "Dad, can you go back to work?" Aisha shot him a look. Don't scare him. But Jamal's phone buzzed before he could answer. He stepped onto the balcony, expecting a lawyer, maybe an informant. The voice on the other end was cold, familiar, dripping with menace. "Carter, it's Hensley." You didn't learn, did you? His laugh was a blade, sharp and deliberate. Check. On your boy. Line's dead before you make a sound. Jamal's heart stopped, the world tilting. He spun, shouting for Malik, but the apartment was quiet. Aisha in the kitchen, Malik's basketball on the couch. Alone. He tore through the rooms, pulse hammering, calling his son's name. Aisha ran in, face pale. He was just here, she gasped, checking the bathroom, the closet. Jamal bolted outside, scanning the street. The kids were gone, the soccer ball still, the air too still. A neighbor, sweeping her porch, pointed down the block. Saw a van peel out, she said, voice trembling. Took a kid, looked like yours. Jamal sprinted, legs burning, fear drowning his pain. Malik, his boy, taken because he dared to fight back, to chase that warehouse lead. Hensley's voice replayed, check on your boy, and Jamal cursed himself for thinking a hospital bed, a bail slip, was the worst of it. He reached the corner, chest heaving, spotting tire marks curving toward an industrial zone. Aisha caught up, grabbing his arm. Call the police, she begged, but Jamal shook his head. The police were Hensley's, or bought by him, the same ones, who'd cuffed him, framed him. He pulled out his burner phone, dialing Dion, the barber who'd tipped him off before. Need a lead now, he said, voice raw. Kidnapping my son near MLK Boulevard. Dion didn't hesitate, texting an address, an abandoned mill 20 miles out, a cartel hideout he'd heard whispers about. Jamal kissed Aisha, promising to bring Malik back, ignoring her tears, her plea, to wait. He couldn't wait, not with Hensley's laugh in his ears, not with Malik's life on the line. He borrowed a neighbor's car, a beat-up hatchback, and sped toward the mill, the city blurring past. His ribs ached, his vision swam, but he gripped the wheel, fueled by a father's rage. The mill loomed on the horizon, a rotting skeleton, of brick and rusted steel, windows shattered, surrounded by overgrown weeds. He parked a half-mile away, moving on foot, crouching low, every shadow a threat. The mill's entrance was unguarded, a rusted gate swinging in the wind. Jamal slipped inside, the air thick with dust and mold, his sneakers silent on cracked concrete. Voices echoed from deeper in, low, rough, laughing. He followed, heart pounding, until he saw Malik, tied to a chair in a dimly lit room, duct tape over his mouth, eyes wide with fear. Two men stood nearby, cartel muscle, guns slung casually, joking about their pay. Jamal's blood boiled, but he stayed hidden, counting exits, planning. He had no weapon, no backup, just a father's will. He grabbed a loose pipe from the floor. Heavy, cold, his only chance. He moved fast, swinging the pipe, catching one man in the temple, dropping him before he could shout. The second spun, reaching for his gun, but Jamal tackled him, slamming his head against the concrete, breath ragged. Malik whimpered, and Jamal ripped the tape off, untying him, whispering, "You're okay. I've got you." Malik clung to him, shaking. But there was no time. Footsteps echoed, more men coming, and Jamal pulled Malik toward a side exit, dodging crates, praying for a clear path. They reached a hallway, the exit in sight, when laughter stopped him cold, Hensley's, booming through. The mill. "Nice try, Carter," his voice called, amplified like he was watching. "This was your lesson." A click echoed, sharp, mechanical, and then a whoosh. Flames erupted, licking the walls, spreading fast. The mill was rigged, a trap, and Hensley's. Men stood outside, shadows in the firelight, laughing as the heat closed in. Jamal scooped Malik into his arms, the boy's weight straining his battered ribs, and ran, smoke choking his lungs, fire singeing his skin. The hallway narrowed, beams creaking, collapsing behind them. Jamal's eyes burned, vision blurring, but he saw the exit, a sliver of moonlight through a crumbling wall. A beam fell heavy, flaming, blocking their path, and Malik screamed, "Dad!" Jamal's legs shook, his strength fading, but he couldn't stop. He heaved Malik over his shoulder, climbing the debris, splinters tearing his palms. The flames roared, heat blistering his back, and he dove through the gap, rolling onto dirt outside. Malik safe in his arms, he staggered to his feet, coughing, burns stinging his neck, his hands. The mill blazed, a furnace consuming itself. Hensley's laughter gone, but his trap clear. Malik sobbed, clinging to him, and Jamal checked him. No cuts, no burns, just terror. He carried him to the car, every step agony, expecting Hensley's men to emerge, guns drawn. But the night was empty, the trap meant to kill, not capture. He drove, Malik curled in the passenger seat, silent as the mill's glow faded in the rear view. Back at Aisha's sister's, he collapsed into Aisha's arms, Malik between them, safe but scarred. The burns on Jamal's skin were nothing compared to the fire in his chest. Hensley hadn't just framed him, hadn't just taken his badge. He'd taken his son, if only for hours, and set ablaze to bury them both. The charges still loomed, the precinct still turned away, and now his family was a target, their safety a thread stretched to breaking. Jamal held Aisha's gaze, seeing her fear, her strength, and knew he couldn't stop. Hensley wanted him dead, his family broken, his name erased. But Jamal was alive, and that was enough to fight another day. Jamal Carter slumped against the couch in his sister-in-law's cramped Atlanta apartment, the burns on his neck stinging under a thin layer of gauze. Malik slept beside him, curled tight, his basketball clutched like a shield, still shaken from the mill fire that nearly took them both. Aisha moved quietly in the kitchen, brewing tea, her eyes darting to Jamal with a mix of relief and dread. The night's rescue felt like a victory, fleeting and fragile. Malik was safe, but the cost was carved into Jamal's skin, his battered ribs, his fractured trust. Lieutenant Victor Hensley's trap, that blazing mill, wasn't just a warning. It was a declaration of war, one that didn't care who got burned. The drug charges from the warehouse ambush still loomed, a felony noose tightening, and the precinct's silence was deafening. Jamal's phone, a burner hidden from police trackers, sat dark on the table. He needed a move, a way to hit back. But every path felt like a trap. Could he keep his family safe when the world was turning against him? Dawn broke, heavy with humidity, the apartment's windows fogging as Atlanta stirred. Aisha handed Jamal a mug, her voice low. "You can't go out there again," she said, nodding at his burns. "Not after last night." He met her gaze, wanting to promise safety, but the truth choked him. Hensley had taken Malik, torched a mill to kill them, framed him as a dealer. Staying still wasn't an option. It was surrender. "I've got to end this," he said, voice rough. "For Malik, for us." Aisha's lips pressed tight, but she nodded, knowing his fight was theirs too. The news hit like a gut punch by noon. Jamal's face was plastered across every Atlanta station, not as a hero detective, but a villain. Rogue cop turned drug lord. One headline screamed, claiming he'd fled custody, masterminded a cartel from within the precinct. His commendations, 15 years of service, lives saved, were erased, replaced with lies about bribes, violence, corruption. Aisha flipped through channels, each worse than the last, until Malik woke, eyes wide, seeing his dad's mugshot next to words like fugitive and traitor. Jamal pulled him close, shutting off the TV. "It's not true," he said, but the words felt hollow against the city's roar. Who could rewrite a man's life so completely? He dug into his burner, checking precinct leaks from an old informant, a tech guy who'd hacked internal memos. The smear wasn't random. Hensley's allies high up had wiped Jamal's records, replacing them with fabrications. His awards, his closed cases, even his hiring date, gone, like he'd never existed. The betrayal cut deeper than the mills. Flames, but Jamal saw a thread. The cartel deal he'd overheard, Hensley's shipment was the key. If he could expose it, prove the precinct's corruption, he might flip the narrative. He contacted a journalist, Lena Harper, a bulldog from a local paper who'd broken cop scandals before. She agreed to meet, neutral ground, a park far from prying eyes. Was this his chance to strike back or another setup? Jamal slipped out at dusk, hoodie up, burns hidden under a scarf, leaving Aisha with a promise to be careful. The park was quiet, oak trees casting long shadows, a fountain gurgling softly. Lena waited on a bench, notepad ready, her sharp eyes scanning him. "You're a ghost now, Carter," she said. "No preamble. What have you got?" Jamal handed her a USB audio from the warehouse before he'd lost his phone, fragments of Hensley's deal. It's not much, he admitted, but it's real. Cops and cartel working together. Lena listened, nodding, her pen scratching fast. This could blow it open, she said, but you're radioactive. They'll hit back hard. She was right. The story broke online by midnight, Lena's byline blazing. Atlanta PD linked to cartel. Detective framed. The audio wasn't clear enough to convict, but it named Hensley, tied him to the warehouse, sparked protests anew. Jamal watched from the apartment, Malik asleep, Aisha gripping his hand, hope flickering. Social media erupted. Justice for Carter. Trended. Activists shared the article. Churches called for reform. For a moment, Jamal thought he'd turned the tide, exposed the snake in the precinct's heart. Had he finally caught Hensley off guard? The counterattack was swift, brutal, shattering that hope like glass. Hensley held a press conference at dawn, standing tall in his uniform, precinct brass behind him, cameras flashing. Jamal watched on Aisha's laptop, dread pooling in his gut. Hensley's voice was calm, rehearsed, venom wrapped in sincerity. Detective Carter's actions disgrace us, he said, holding up a tablet with new footage, grainy, doctored, showing Jamal swinging at officers, planting drugs, laughing like a kingpin. The crowd gasped, reporters scribbled, and Jamal's jaw dropped. It was fake, every frame, but seamless, professional, a line no one would question. We're cooperating fully, Hensley added, eyes glinting. Carter's a danger, and we'll bring him in. The fallout was immediate. Protesters who'd chanted. Jamal's name turned, some burning his photo, others tweeting traitor, sellout. News anchors pivoted, calling him a master manipulator, a cop gone rogue. Lena called, voice tight. They got to my editor, she said. Pulled my follow-up, threatened lawsuits. I'm sorry, Jamal. He hung up, numb, as Aisha muted the TV. Malik, staring at the floor. The apartment felt smaller, walls closing in, the city's hate pressing from outside. Could lies really bury a man this deep? Then the bounty hit. A text from Dion, urgent. Words out, 50 grand for your head, dead. Or alive. Cartel's pissed about the article. Watch your back. Jamal's burns itched, a reminder of the mill, of Hensley's reach. He checked the apartment's locks, windows, every shadow a threat. Aisha packed a bag, her hands shaking, ready to move again. But where? The precinct, the media, now the streets, all turned against him, fueled by a lie that fit too well. A black man, badge or no badge, was always guilty. He'd leaked the truth, thought it'd save him, but Hensley twisted it, made him a monster. If you're furious that Jamal's fight for justice turned him into a target, comment number 1, hit like, and subscribe to see if he can outrun this lie. Jamal stood by the window, Atlanta's skyline a haze of light and betrayal. Malik's breathing steadied behind him, Aisha's hand on his shoulder, grounding him. The bounty wasn't just money, it was Hensley's endgame, a citywide hunt to erase him. His USB was gone, his allies silenced, his name poison. But he'd survived the mill, carried Malik through flames. That fire still burned in him, a detective's instinct, a father's vow. He'd find a way, go underground, hit Hensley where it hurt. What happens when a city betrays its own? And the only way out is through the dark. Jamal Carter crouched in the shadows of an Atlanta alley, the city's pulse a distant hum of sirens and neon. His burns throbbed under a hoodie, the graze on his shoulder from a sniper's bullet, Hensley's bounty at work, stinging with every move. The apartment safehouse was compromised. Aisha and Malik moved to a new hideout with her sister, their faces pale with fear he couldn't erase. The news still screamed his name, rogue cop, drug lord, lies that turned neighbors into hunters chasing. 50 grand. Lieutenant Victor Hensley's press conference, that doctored footage, had flipped Jamal's truth into a citywide manhunt. His badge was gone, his record erased, but his fight wasn't. The cartel deal he'd overheard in the warehouse, the mill fire that nearly killed Malik, it all pointed to Hensley's corruption, a poison deep in the precinct's veins. Jamal needed proof now before the bounty claimed him. He moved underground, slipping through Atlanta's underbelly where streetlights flickered, and trust was a currency he couldn't afford. His burner phone buzzed. A text from Rico, an informant from his early days. A wiry ex-con who traded secrets for cash. "Got a line on your cop," Rico wrote. "Meet me, old rail yard. Midnight. Bring nothing shiny." Jamal's jaw tightened. Rico was slippery, loyal only to survival. But he'd never burned Jamal before. The rail yard was a risk, open, exposed. But so was breathing these days. He pocketed the phone, checking the knife tucked in his boot, his only weapon since the precinct. Stripped him bare. Aisha's voice echoed, begging him to stay, but Malik's trembling hands after the mill fire pushed him forward. He'd end this for them. The rail yard sprawled under a moonless sky, rusted tracks snaking through weeds, boxcars looming like forgotten giants. Jamal arrived early, breath fogging in the April chill, eyes scanning for traps. His shoulder ached, blood seeping through a makeshift bandage, but he ignored it, crouching behind a derelict engine. Footsteps crunched and Rico appeared, hands in his jacket glancing nervously. "You look like hell, Carter," he whispered, tossing a cigarette butt. "Got what you want, but it's hot. Real hot." Jamal stayed low, voice steady. "Talk." "Where's Hensley? Moving his product?" Rico hesitated, then spilled. "Cartel's got a drop tomorrow, West Side, old textile plant. Hensley's running point skimming off the top. Names, dates, routes." Rico rattled off details enough to bury a precinct. Jamal memorized every word, his pulse quickening. This was it, the lever to pry Hensley's empire apart. Rico handed him a crumpled map, marked with the plant's location. "You didn't get this from me," he said, eyes darting. "They're watching, man. Everywhere." Jamal nodded, tucking the map away, hope flickering. He'd hit the drop, get proof, expose Hensley before the bounty hunters closed in. He turned to leave, but Rico grabbed his arm, voice urgent. "One more thing. They've got a guy inside, someone you trusted. Fed them your moves." Jamal froze, Sarah Nguyen's face flashing, her leaked notes, her questions at the precinct. Was it her or someone else? Before he could ask, headlights flared, cutting the dark. Tires screeched, and a van roared into the yard, doors flying open. 4 men spilled out, armed, faces masked but moving like cops. Hensley's crew. Rico bolted, vanishing into the weeds, leaving Jamal exposed. The men fanned out, guns raised, shouting, "There's the bastard!" Jamal dove behind a boxcar. Heart slamming, the map crumpled in his fist. Betrayed again, Rico or someone tracking him had sold him out. Bullets pinged off metal, sparks flying, and he ran, weaving through the yard's maze, his shoulder burning as blood soaked his sleeve. The men were fast, trained, their boots pounding closer, radios crackling with orders. He ducked into a shed, its door half off, and held his breath, knife ready, listening. A voice outside laughed, low, familiar, one of Hensley's from the warehouse, the same drawl that mocked him as they planted drugs. "Got a surprise for you, Carter," the man called, tossing something heavy. A clank, then a hiss, smoke grenade filling the shed with choking grey. Jamal coughed, eyes streaming, and burst out, knife slashing, catching one man's arm. The guy swore, dropping his gun, but another tackled Jamal, slamming him to the ground. Gravel biting his burns. Fists rained down, splitting his lip, cracking a rib, but he twisted, stabbing blindly, drawing blood. The man yelped, and Jamal scrambled free, sprinting for the tracks, smoke still clinging to him. He vaulted a fence, landing hard, his vision blurring but kept moving. The map still in his pocket, his only lifeline. He found a storm drain, crawling inside, the stench of rot better than death. Voices faded, the men circling but losing his trail. Jamal's chest heaved, pain lancing through him, but he checked the map intact, his ticket to the textile plant. He'd hit the drop, no question, but first he needed leverage, someone to confirm Rico's intel. He crawled out at dawn, limping to a payphone, calling another contact. T, a street dealer who owed him a favor. T was cagey, but agreed to meet. A diner off 10th Street, no cops, no tricks. Jamal cleaned his wounds in a gas station sink, blood swirling down the drain, and headed out, the bounty's weight heavier with every step. The diner was quiet, neon buzzing, T waiting in. A booth, his dreads tied back, eyes darting. "You're a dead man walking, Carter," he said, sliding a coffee over. "What's the play?" Jamal laid it out. Hensley's dropped the cartel Rico's map. T listened, then leaned in, voice low. "I know a guy, cartel runner, caught last week. He's scared talking. Says Hensley's framing you to cover his own dirt. Wants immunity, might spill everything." Jamal's hopes surged, sharp and dangerous. "Where is he?" T scribbled an address. A safe house east side, guarded but reachable. "Get him before they do," T warned. "Hensley's cleaning house." Jamal moved fast, taking back alleys to the safe house, a rundown duplex with boarded windows. He knocked, using T's code, and a skinny man opened the door, eyes wild. Hensley's runner, Juan, shaking like a leaf. "I'll talk," Juan said, voice cracking. "Hensley's running drugs, killing anyone who snitches. You're next, Carter, unless you... Get him first." Jamal sat him down, recording on his burner. Every word gold. Dates, names, Hensley's cut. Juan's hands trembled, detailing the textile plant drop, confirming Rico's intel. Jamal felt the tide turning. A real shot to end this, to save Aisha, Malik, himself. He stood, promising Juan protection, when the door burst open. SWAT stormed. Kin, vests black, rifles up, shouting, "Down now!" Jamal froze, hands raised, Juan screaming, "You set me up!" But Jamal hadn't. Juan was wired, a mic hidden in his shirt, feeding everything to Hensley. The SWAT team wasn't precinct. They were Hensley's, loyal to his payroll, eyes cold as they cuffed Jamal, ignoring his pleas. Juan lunged, grabbing. A knife and a shot rang out. Juan crumpled, blood pooling, dead before he hit the floor. Jamal's stomach dropped, his leverage gone, the recording useless without a witness. The team dragged him outside, tossing him into a van, the safe house burning behind them, flames licking the dawn. The van screeched off. Jamal's wrists bound, his ribs screaming, the team's radios crackling with Hensley's voice. "Good work, boys," he said. "Smug final. Carter's done." Jamal's mind raced. Aisha, Malik, the map still in his pocket, now his only card. He'd thought Juan was his win, thought he'd outsmarted Hensley. But the trap was tighter, deadlier than he'd imagined. The van hit a turn, Atlanta's skyline fading, and Jamal braced, knowing he'd lost more than a witness. T was dead too, he realized, caught in Hensley's sweep. Another name erased to keep the cartel safe. The fight wasn't over, but the cost was climbing and Jamal's strength was running dry. The Atlanta night was thick with the hum of cicadas as Jamal Carter sat in the back of a SWAT van. Wrists cuffed so tight his fingers numbed, the sting of betrayal sharper than his bruised ribs. The safe house raid. Juan's blood pooling, T, likely dead, the wired confession a trap. Replayed in his mind, Lieutenant Victor Hensley's voice crackling through the radio, smug and final. "You're done, Carter." The van lurched through the city, headlights cutting the dark, delivering him not to a precinct but a holding cell downtown, a concrete box where his name meant nothing. The textile plant map, crumpled in his pocket, was his last thread to Hensley's cartel, but it felt useless now, a taunt from a fight he was losing. Aisha and Malik were hidden, safe for the moment, but how long could that last? Jamal leaned against the van's wall, burns itching under his hoodie, and forced his mind to focus. He'd survived the mill, the bounty, the ambush. He could survive. This if he played it smart. Morning brought a sliver of hope, fragile as glass. Aisha hired a lawyer, Maria Torres, a firebrand who'd taken on dirty cops before. She met Jamal in a precinct interview room, her suit crisp, eyes sharp. "You're in deep, Carter," she said, flipping through files. "Drug charges, assault, now inciting a riot?" "They're stacking the deck," Jamal nodded, voice low. "It's Hensley. He's running drugs, framed me to cover it. Got a map, drop tomorrow, textile plant." Maria's pen paused, her gaze steady. "If we can prove it, we flip this. But you need to surrender, face the court. Running makes you guilty. Surrender." The word twisted in Jamal's gut, but Maria was right. The bounty had Atlanta's streets crawling with hunters, and he couldn't dodge forever, not with Malik's safety at stake. He agreed, letting her arrange it, the cuffs snapping back on as he was booked, this time with a plan. Maria dug fast, pulling strings with a contact in evidence, and found gold body cam footage from his first arrest on Roswell Road, buried but not erased. It showed Jamal's hands up, badge clear, Hensley slamming him down, lying through his teeth. It wasn't enough to clear the drug charges, but it could sway a judge, maybe get bail, give him time. Could justice finally tip in his favor? The courtroom was a circus. Reporters packed in, cameras banned, but phones sneaking shots. Jamal stood in an ill-fitting suit, burns hidden, ribs aching, Malik's face in his mind to keep him steady. Maria argued hard, presenting the body cam clip, her voice cutting through the murmurs. My client identified himself, was assaulted, framed to silence him. The judge, a grey-haired woman named Ellis, watched the footage, her face unreadable, but her eyes narrowing at Hensley's smirk on screen. The prosecutor, a slick type with Hensley's precinct ties, countered smoothly, calling Jamal a flight risk, a danger, waving the doctored warehouse footage. Judge Ellis leaned forward, voice calm. "I'm granting bail," she said, gavel tapping. "But trial's in 2 weeks. Stay clean, Mr. Carter." Jamal exhaled, Aisha squeezing his hand from the gallery, her relief a fleeting warmth. Maria whispered, "We've got a shot, but they'll push harder now." She was right. Hensley's eyes, cold across the courtroom, promised retaliation. Jamal walked out, free for now, the textile plant map burning a hole in his pocket. He'd hit that drop, get proof, end this before trial. The sun hit his face, Atlanta's skyline sharp, and for a moment he believed he'd won a round. Was this the break he'd been fighting for? The trial began too fast, a whirlwind of lies and half-truths. Maria was a lion, shredding the prosecution's case. The body cam footage playing on repeat, showing Jamal's truth, a detective betrayed by his own. Witnesses, neighbors from Roswell Road, even Dion, testified he'd never resisted, never dealt drugs. The jury, mixed but attentive, seemed to lean his way, nodding when Maria exposed Hensley's buried complaints. Jamal sat tall, hope growing, picturing Malik's smile when he'd walk free, Aisha's arms around him. Judge Ellis kept order, her rulings fair, her questions sharp. The prosecutor fumbled, his story fraying, and Jamal dared to think it was over. Had he finally outrun Hensley's shadow? Then the hammer fell. On day 3, the jury's mood shifted, eyes averted, faces hard. Maria caught it, whispering, "Something's wrong." The prosecutor called a surprise witness, a cop from Hensley's squad, claiming Jamal confessed in holding, bragged about running drugs. It was a lie, blatant, but the cop's badge sold it. Maria objected, furious, but the damage was done. Closing arguments came, and the jury deliberated only an hour. A bad sign, too quick. Jamal's heart sank as they filed in, the foreman avoiding his gaze. "Guilty," the foreman said, voice flat. "Drug trafficking, 5 years minimum." The courtroom spun, Aisha's gasp echoing, Maria's hand on his arm, too late to ground him. Guilty. The body cam, the witnesses, the truth, it hadn't mattered. Jamal's eyes locked on the jury, spotting a juror slipping a thick envelope into his coat, another smirking at the prosecutor. Bribed, bought, Hensley's reach deeper than he'd feared. Judge Ellis frowned, but her gavel fell, sentencing set for next week. Jamal's legs buckled as guards cuffed him, leading him out, Aisha's sobs fading behind glass. If you're outraged that justice failed Jamal despite the truth, comment number 1, hit like and subscribe. To see if he can fight from behind bars, the prison transport waited, a grey van idling in the courthouse lot, Atlanta's heat pressing down. Jamal sat, wrists bound, staring at the floor, the map still hidden in his shoe, useless now. Maria's voice rang in his head. They'll push harder now. And she'd been right. Hensley hadn't just framed him, he'd rigged the system, turned. Jurors erased Jamal's life. The van rolled out, but trouble came fast. The other inmates, 2 burly men with cartel tattoos, eyed him, whispering. One slid a shiv from his sleeve, the blade glinting, and Jamal tensed, ribs screaming as he braced. "You're the cop, huh?" The man sneered, lunging. Jamal dodged, slamming his shoulder into the man's chest, the van swerving as the driver shouted. The second inmate grabbed him, fist cracking Jamal's ribs, pain exploding. He fought back, cuffed hands clumsy, but Desperate, kicking the shiv away. The guards ignored it, laughing, bought by Hensley too. Blood dripped from Jamal's nose, his vision blurring as the van screeched to a stop. The doors flew open, revealing a prison yard, inmates circling like wolves, shivs flashing in the dusk. Jamal stumbled out, surrounded, the cartel's reach. Clear? Hensley's final move to silence him. No bars needed. If you're stunned that even a courtroom couldn't protect Jamal, comment number 1. Hit like and subscribe to see him face this new hell. What happens when the walls close in, and the only fight left is for survival? The prison yard stretched grey and unforgiving under Atlanta's brutal sun, a concrete jungle where Jamal Carter stood, wrists bruised from cuffs, ribs cracked from the van attack. The inmates circling him, shivs glinting like promises of pain, knew him as the cop, Detective Carter, guilty of trafficking, a lie woven by Lieutenant Victor Hensley that landed him here. Blood dried on his lip, his burns from the mill fire screaming under a torn jumpsuit, but his eyes stayed sharp, scanning for an out. The trial's betrayal, bribed jurors, a rigged verdict, had stripped his badge, his name, his freedom, leaving him in this pit where a black cop was prey. Aisha and Malik were hidden, safe for now, but the textile plant map tucked in his shoe was a fading hope against Hensley's reach. The lead inmate, a hulking figure with cartel ink, grinned, twirling his blade. "Time's up, hero," he said. Lunging, Jamal sidestepped, pain spiking his ribs, and grabbed the man's wrist, twisting until the shiv clattered free. The circle tightened, jeers rising, but he fought, years of training kicking in, block, strike, move. A second inmate swung, clipping his shoulder, and Jamal stumbled, kicking gravel into another's eyes, buying seconds. Guards watched from the towers, smirking, their radios silent. Hensley's payroll, no doubt. He took a fist to the jaw, tasting copper, and fell, the crowd roaring, but rolled free, scrambling to a wall. Breathing ragged, he stood, fists up, knowing he couldn't win, not like this. The lead inmate laughed, retrieving his shiv. "Cops don't last here," he said, advancing. A whistle cut the air, sharp, and the yard froze. A guard, barrel-chested with a scar across his cheek, barked, "Back off now!" The inmates scattered, grumbling, and Jamal exhaled, leaning against the wall, blood dripping down his chin. The guard, name tag reading Baxter, eyed him, not with pity but calculation. "Carter, right?" he said, voice low. "You're marked. Better. Watch it." Jamal nodded, wary. Baxter's tone wasn't help, it was a warning. The yard emptied, inmates herded inside, and Jamal shuffled to his cell. A 6x8 coffin of cracked concrete and rusted bars, the door slamming shut behind him. Inside, he sank onto the bunk, pain a constant hum, ribs, burns, now a swelling. Jaw. The prison was Hensley's endgame, a place to break him where no badge, no truth could reach. The verdict echoed, guilty, 5 years, and with it, the jury's bought smiles, the prosecutor's lies, Maria's stunned face. Aisha's last letter, smuggled by Maria, burned in his memory. "Malik asks for you every night. We're fighting. Stay alive." He clung to that, to their faces, but the yard's shivs weren't random. The cartel inmates knew his name, his past, and they weren't alone. Hensley's shadow stretched here, through guards, through whispers, through blood. Days bled into nights, the prison's rhythm a grind of slop meals and clanging gates. Jamal kept his head down, mapping the place. Guards' shifts, inmates' alliances, weak spots in the fence. He wasn't just a cop here, he was a target, every glance a threat. Baxter patrolled his block, always watching, his scar twitching when he smirked. Jamal caught rumors. Baxter ran side hustles, drugs mostly, slipping baggies to cartel boys. For cash. It clicked. Hensley's cartel, the textile plant deal, had roots here, and Baxter was the link, a guard dirty enough to keep the pipeline flowing. If Jamal could expose him, he'd have leverage, maybe a way out. He started small, earning nods from lesser inmates, petty thieves, not killers, trading cigarettes for intel. A skinny kid, Deke, barely 20, spilled the most. Baxter's got a stash hidden in the laundry, moves it every week. Jamal listened, planning. If he could get proof, catch Baxter mid-deal, he'd have something to bargain with. Parole, retrial, anything to see Malik again. He rallied Deke and a few others. Misfits tired of Baxter's reign and laid it out. Tail the guard, find the stash, blow it open. They agreed, eyes bright with defiance, and Jamal felt a spark. Not just survival, but fight. Could he turn this hell into his weapon? The plan moved fast. Deke watched Baxter's rounds, noting his stops at the laundry, always late, always alone. Jamal organized the crew, 3 men, quick and quiet, ready to slip in after lights out. The night came, air thick with tension, the cell block humming with snores and whispers. Jamal led, barefoot to muffle steps, heart pounding as they crept. To the laundry, a cavern of steam and shadows. Deke jimmied the lock and they were in, machines silent, the air heavy with bleach. Jamal searched, finding a loose panel behind a dryer, and pulled it free. A duffel stuffed with baggies, white powder glinting, enough to bury Baxter and point to Hensley's cartel. He signaled to Deke, grinning, the first real win since Roswell Road. They'd take it to the warden, a stern woman named Hargrove, who'd seemed fair at intake, promising oversight. Jamal zipped the duffel ready to move, when boots echoed, sharp and close. Baxter stood in the doorway, radio off, pistol drawn, his scar livid under the bulbs. Glare. "Nice try, Carter," he growled, stepping in. 2 more guards behind him, cartel inmates at their heels. Deke froze, the others backed up, and Jamal's stomach dropped. A setup. Someone snitched, or Baxter knew all along. The inmates lunged, shivs flashing, and Jamal swung the duffel, knocking one down, powder bursting in a cloud. Deke screamed, tackled, blood pooling as a blade found his side. Jamal fought. Fists and elbows, but Baxter's gun pressed to his temple, cold final. "You're too smart, Carter," Baxter said, laughing. "Hensley said you'd try this." The guards grabbed him, wrenching his arms, and dragged him out, the duffel left behind. Deke's body limp on the floor. The cell block woke, shouts rising, but no one came. Baxter owned this place, just like Hensley owned the streets. They didn't take him to the warden. Instead, Baxter staged a riot, sirens blaring, inmates spilling into halls, fists and shivs. Flying. He pinned it on Jamal, claiming he'd incited it, smuggled drugs, attacked a guard. The lie was perfect, echoing the trial, the riot at the rec center. Jamal's fight twisted into chaos. Guards swarmed, batons swinging, and Jamal took hits, knees buckling, vision swimming as they hauled him to solitary. A black hole of a cell, no light, no sound, just pain. The door slammed, locking him in darkness, his burns raw, ribs shattered, hope snuffed out like a candle. Solitary was a void, time melting into hunger and ache. Jamal curled on the slab, Malik's voice faint. Aisha's letter a ghost in his mind. Hargrove's promise of parole sparked by his stand against Baxter was ash now. Hensley's reach crushed it, just like it crushed Juan T., his trial. The map in his shoe was gone, stripped in the chaos, his last link to the textile plant severed. He'd rallied men, found proof, thought he'd won, but Hensley's game was rigged, every move a trap. The walls pressed closer, air thin, and Jamal fought to breathe, to remember why he fought at all, for his son, his wife, a truth no one else would carry. Solitary confinement was a void, a black pit where time dissolved into hunger and pain, trapping Jamal Carter in a cell no bigger than a coffin. The walls of the Atlanta prison pressed close, damp and cold, reeking of mold, swallowing sound except for his own shallow breaths. His ribs cracked from the van attack and the yard brawl, stabbed with every shift on the concrete slab. Burns from the mill fire, now scabbed and raw, itched under a tattered jumpsuit, and his swollen jaw throbbed, a reminder of Baxter's staged riot, pinning him as the instigator. Lieutenant Victor Hensley's lies, drug charges, a rigged trial, a bounty, had buried him here, erasing 15 years as a detective, turning his badge into a curse. Aisha and Malik were out there, hidden, their faces his only anchor, but even they flickered in the dark, drowned by exhaustion. The textile plant map, his last hope to expose Hensley's cartel, was gone, stripped in the chaos. He'd fought. Rallied inmates found proof, only to lose it all in Baxter's trap. Was this the end, or could he still claw his way out? Days blurred, marked only by the slot in the door sliding open, a tray of grey slop shoved through, half rotten, barely, enough to keep him alive. Starvation gnawed his stomach, sharpening every ache. But worse was the silence, thick and suffocating, broken by hallucinations. Malik's voice calling Dad, Aisha's scream from the mill fire, Hensley's laugh echoing like a blade. Jamal. Curled tighter, shivering despite the sweat beading his brow, fighting to hold his mind together. He traced the slab's cracks with a trembling finger, whispering their names, Aisha, Malik, to stay grounded, to remember why he'd endured the arrest, the smear, the shivs. But the dark whispered back, cruel, relentless, "You're nothing. They've forgotten you." A clank jolted him, faint, distant, the slot opening late, no tray this time. A shadow moved and something slid inside. A phone, cheap, scratched, glowing faintly. Jamal stared, mistrust flaring, expecting another of Hensley's games. He grabbed it, hands shaking, and powered it on, the screen's light blinding after days of black. A text waited, no sender. "Aisha's fighting for you. Activists got your story. Check the file." He opened it, heart pounding, and found a video. Link, grainy but real. Aisha at a rally, her voice fierce, holding a sign, "Free Jamal Carter." Behind her, hundreds marched, chanting his name, organizers passing out flyers with his face, not as a fugitive, but a hero framed by corruption. Tears stung his eyes, not weakness but fire reigniting the spark Baxter's riot had nearly snuffed. The phone had one bar, enough to search. Jamal typed fast, pulling up news clips, small at first, local blogs, then bigger, national. Aisha had linked with activists, church groups, even Lena Harper, the journalist he'd trusted before Hensley silenced her. They dug up his old cases, commendations Hensley erased, and were pushing for a retrial, citing the body cam from Roswell Road. Protests swelled outside the prison, the precinct, City Hall, demanding justice. Jamal's chest tightened. Hope. Battling fear. Aisha was exposed, vulnerable, and Hensley wouldn't sit quiet. But she was fighting, and that meant he had to, no matter the cost. He gripped the phone, mind racing for a plan. Solitary was meant to break him, but this lifeline changed everything. He could record a statement, send it to Aisha, amplify the truth. He hit record, voice hoarse, cracked but steady. "I'm Detective Jamal Carter," he began, staring into the dim lens. "Framed for drugs I never touched, locked away to hide a cartel run by Lieutenant Victor Hensley." He detailed it all, the arrest, the mill, the trial, Baxter's stash, every blow, every lie. "My family's in danger because I got too close. Don't let them win." He uploaded it to the phone's cloud, praying it reached Aisha, Lena, someone who'd blast it wide. The slot clanked again and Jamal hid the phone under the slab, heart hammering as a guard's boots echoed. Not Baxter. Someone new, younger, nervous, slipping him water, eyes darting like he feared being caught. "Keep it quiet," the guard whispered, gone before Jamal could ask his name. A crack in Hensley's armor, maybe, or another trick, but it bought him time. He waited, hours or days he couldn't tell, until the phone buzzed, a new message. Videos out, millions watching, stay alive. His statement had hit, viral overnight, trending with justice for Carter, shared by activists, rappers, even a senator. Protesters choked Atlanta's streets, their chants a faint rumble through the prison's walls. Jamal exhaled, a half smile breaking through, his voice reaching further than Hensley's lies. Had he finally shifted the fight? The victory shattered like glass. The phone lit up, no text, just a live stream link, loading slow in the cell's weak signal. Jamal clicked, and his blood froze. Aisha, tied to a chair in a bare room, duct tape. Over her mouth, eyes wide with terror. A masked man paced behind her, knife glinting, his voice distorted but venomous. "Carter, you talk too much," he said, tapping the blade on Aisha's shoulder. "Retract your video, or she's gone." The feed cut, Aisha's scream echoing, leaving Jamal staring at a blank screen, his world collapsing. He pounded the wall, knuckles splitting, rage and fear choking him. Malik was still out there, maybe next, and Aisha, his rock, his fight, was Hensley's pawn. The cell spun, hunger and pain blurring into panic. He'd thought the video was his win. A way to rally the world, expose the truth. But Hensley played dirtier, striking where it hurt most, turning Jamal's voice into a trap. The guard's phone wasn't a lifeline. It was bait, slipped to him so he'd speak so Hensley could hit back harder. Aisha's face burned in his mind, her strength, her laugh, now silenced by a blade. He clutched the phone, battery dying, no way to call, to fight, to save her from this cell. The dark closed in, heavier now, his hope a flickering ember against a storm. He sank to the slab, head in hands, fighting hallucinations, Malik burning, Aisha bleeding, Hensley laughing. The prison's hum faded, leaving only his pulse, hammering. Like a war drum. He'd lost everything, badge, freedom, now Aisha, maybe Malik too, but he wasn't broken, not yet. That guard, the nervous one, was a thread, a way out if he could reach him. He'd escape, find Aisha, end Hensley, no matter the cost. The phone screen went black, battery dead, but Jamal's resolve didn't. He'd fight from this hole, for his family, for the truth, even if it killed him. Solitary confinement crushed Jamal Carter in its grip. The Atlanta prison's black cell, a tomb of silence and despair, where hunger carved hollows in his cheeks and pain seared his cracked ribs. Aisha's scream from the live stream, tied, terrified. A knife at her throat. Looped in his mind, Lieutenant Victor Hensley's masked thug, demanding he retract his viral video exposing the cartel. The dead phone, smuggled by a nervous guard, lay useless under the slab, its battery drained, leaving Jamal with nothing but rage and a vow to save his wife, his son, Malik, wherever he was. The textile plant map, his last lead to Hensley's, empire was gone, stripped in the riot, but his fight wasn't. He'd rallied inmates, defied a rigged trial, survived a bounty. Hensley hadn't broken him yet. He paced the cell, burn stinging, mind racing for a way out, knowing every second brought Aisha closer to death. A faint scrape broke the silence, the slot creaking open, no tray, just a shadow. The young guard, same nervous eyes, no name tag, slipped. A key through, whispering, "You didn't get this from me, move tonight." He vanished, boots fading, leaving Jamal stunned, the key cold in his palm. A trap, maybe, but Aisha's life hung on it, and he'd rather die fighting than rot here. He waited for the prison's hum to settle, guards' rounds slowing, then worked the lock. His fingers clumsy from starvation, but steady with purpose. The door clicked, swinging open to a dim hall, air heavy with bleach and rust. He moved, barefoot, silent, a ghost in orange, every shadow a threat. The cell block slept, snores masking his steps as he slipped past Baxter's post, the corrupt guard's chair empty, radio off. Jamal's heart pounded, picturing Aisha's face, Malik's trembling hands after the mill fire. He found a vent, low and loose, remembered from Deke's whispers before the riot took him. He pried it open, crawling through dust and cobwebs. Ribs screaming until he emerged in a maintenance room, pipes hissing, a door leading out. Outside the night was thick, Atlanta's skyline a faint glow beyond the fence. He scaled it, wire cutting his palms, and dropped to freedom, pain a dull roar against his need to move. He stole a bike from a nearby lot. Pedaling hard, burns blistering under sweat, heading to Aisha's sister's last hideout. Dawn broke as he arrived, Malik running out, eyes wide. "Dad!" and Aisha's sister, Tanya, pulling him inside. "Malik's safe," she said, "but Aisha—" Her voice cracked, and Jamal's stomach dropped. Activists had traced the live stream to a cartel safe house, a warehouse east of the city, guarded, locked tight. Jamal hugged Malik, promising, "I'll bring her back." His voice steady for his son, but breaking inside. Tanya handed him a burner, loaded with contacts, Lena Harper, the journalist, and a hacker friend rallying for his cause. They'd tracked Hensley's men, confirmed Aisha was alive for now. Jamal called Lena, her voice sharp, urgent. "You're out? Good. We've got eyes on the warehouse, but it's a fortress. Cops won't touch it. Hensley's got pull. I'm sending you a car, gear, whatever you need." The car came fast, a beat-up sedan with a duffel, knife, flashlight, a stolen pistol, no questions asked. Jamal drove east, Malik's face fueling him, the city blurring past. The warehouse squatted by a polluted creek, chain-link fence topped with razor wire, floodlights glaring. He parked a mile out, moving on foot, hoodie up, burns hidden, every step a prayer for Aisha. He scouted, counting guards. 6 armed cartel muscle mixed with Hensley's cops, their radios crackling. A side gate was weak, rusted, and he cut. Through, slipping into shadows, the pistol heavy in his hand. Inside the warehouse was a maze of crates, air thick with oil and fear. He heard her first, Aisha's muffled sob, faint, guiding him to a locked room, 2 guards outside, laughing. Low? Jamal moved like a blade, silent, taking one down with a chokehold, the other with a crack to the skull, their radios dropping. He kicked the door in, finding Aisha bound, bruised but alive, her eyes lighting with hope. He cut her free, her arms around him, trembling, but there was no time. Alarms screamed, boots pounded, and Hensley's voice boomed through a speaker, cold, mocking. "You're predictable, Carter. Enjoy the show." Jamal pulled Aisha behind crates, gunfire erupting, bullets shredding wood, sparks flying. He returned fire, clipping a guard, but they were pinned, outnumbered, the exit too far. Aisha gripped his hand, whispering, "Malik needs you." And he nodded, resolve hardening. He'd get her out, no matter what. They crawled, dodging rounds, when a new sound hit. Explosives, wired crates igniting, flames licking the walls. Hensley's trap rigged to bury them, just like the mill, his laughter crackling through the speaker. "You don't walk away, Carter." Smoke choked the air, heat blistering, and Jamal's burns roared, but he lifted Aisha, searching for a way through. A window high and cracked was their shot, but the fire spread fast, beams groaning above. He boosted her up, bullets grazing. His leg, blood soaking his jumpsuit, and followed, glass cutting deep as they tumbled outside. They ran, flames at their backs, the warehouse collapsing, a roar of heat and ash. Jamal's vision swam, blood loss and pain dragging him down, but Aisha held him up, her strength a mirror of his own. They reached the sedan, diving in, tires screeching as he floored it, the explosion's glow fading in the rear view. Aisha's hand found his, her voice steady despite tears. "You did it, Jamal." He nodded, but the speaker's echo lingered. Hensley's trap wasn't just death, it was erasure, a final strike to wipe them out. Malik waited, safe, but the fight wasn't over. They ditched the car miles out, hiding in a safe house Lena arranged, a basement with cots and canned food, activists guarding the door. Jamal collapsed, Aisha tending his wounds, her touch grounding him as Malik's call came through, his voice small but alive. "Dad, you okay?" Jamal smiled, pain fading for that second. "I'm here, buddy." Aisha's eyes met his, fear and love intertwined, knowing Hensley's reach wasn't done. The warehouse was gone, but so was their evidence, the map, the chance to nail him clean. Jamal's pistol lay empty, his body broken, but his mind burned. Hensley thought he'd won, thought fire could end it. He was wrong. Jamal Carter lay trapped beneath the rubble of the exploded warehouse, the air thick with dust and ash, his body a map of pain, cracked ribs, burns from the mill fire, fresh cuts from shattered glass. Aisha clung to him, her breath ragged, Malik's small form pressed between them, shielded from the collapsing roof. The blast, triggered by Lieutenant Victor Hensley's voice through a speaker, was meant to erase them, a final act of vengeance for Jamal's defiance, his viral video, his prison escape, his raid to save Aisha. The world faded, smoke choking, his lungs debris pinning his legs, but their heartbeats faint and fierce kept him fighting. He'd lost his badge, his name, his freedom, but not his family, not yet. Hensley's laughter lingered, mocking, certain they'd burn. Jamal's hand tightened around Aisha's, his mind clawing through pain for a way out. One last stand against a system that saw his skin before his truth. Flashbacks cut through the haze, sharp and vivid. In the warehouse before the bomb, Jamal had moved with purpose, knife flashing, guards falling. Aisha's eyes meeting his with hope. He'd planted a tracker, a tiny chip from Lena's gear, slipped into Hensley's coat during a scuffle. Desperate move, a detective's instinct when all else failed. It was a gamble, untested, but if it worked, it could lead to him, to proof, to justice. The memory anchored him now, debris shifting above, his burns screaming as he pushed, freeing. One arm. Aisha whispered, "Stay with us," her voice a lifeline, Malik's small hand gripping his. He shoved harder, concrete scraping his skin, until a crack of light broke through, air rushing in, faint but real. He heaved, lifting a beam, pain blinding, and pulled Aisha and Malik free, crawling to open ground. The warehouse a smoldering ruin behind them. Sirens wailed, close, not Hensley's corrupt cops but feds, their SUVs screaming in, lights flashing. Agents poured out, rifles up, shouting, "Hands up, Carter!" Jamal froze, expecting betrayal, but a woman stepped forward, badge gleaming. Agent. Ruiz FBI, her voice firm but not cruel. "You're safe," she said, holstering her gun. "That tracker you planted, it led us straight to Hensley." Jamal's knees buckled, relief crashing through fear. Aisha's arm steadying him as medics rushed in, wrapping Malik in a blanket, checking Aisha's bruises. The feds moved fast, cuffing Hensley blocks away. His cartel allies rounded up, their faces grim under floodlights. Ruiz knelt beside Jamal, her eyes steady. "Your video," she said, "it wasn't just noise. It sparked our probe months back, but that tracker sealed it. We've got Hensley's books, calls, deals, enough to take down half the precinct." Jamal stared, blood crusting his lip, the weight of it sinking in. His statement from Solitary, smuggled out, had rippled further than he'd dreamed. Not just trending, but igniting a federal sting, exposing cops and cartel across Georgia, Alabama, beyond. Dozens of precincts were under scrutiny, brass resigning, headlines screaming reform. He'd been a spark, his pain a fire that burned wider than Hensley's lies. Medics patched his wounds, Aisha's hand never leaving his, Malik's eyes bright despite the chaos. The feds offered transport, a safe house until the dust settled, and Jamal nodded, too battered to argue, but his mind churned. Hensley was cuffed, but the system that let him thrive, rigged trials, buried complaints, racist traps, wasn't. Gone. Aisha leaned close, whispering, "You did it, Jamal," and he shook his head, voice raw. "Not yet. Malik needs more than this." She smiled, faint but fierce, knowing he'd never stop. Weeks later, healed but scarred, Jamal faced the precinct one last time. The chief, cornered by the probe, offered reinstatement, back pay, a private apology, his voice stiff with shame. Jamal stood in the same suit he'd worn for his detective promotion, 15 years ago, head high, eyes cold. He slid his resignation across the desk, no words needed. The badge had been his pride, but it hadn't shielded him, hadn't seen him as more than a threat in black skin. Walking out, he felt lighter, not broken but reborn. The precinct's hum fading behind him, a chapter closed. He poured his fight into something new, a non-profit, Truth in Blue, built to reform policing, train recruits, hold systems accountable. He spoke at rallies, precincts, schools, his voice steady, scars a testament. In a Chicago academy, he faced young cops, black, white, brown, telling his story, not to scare, but to sharpen. "Racism doesn't always scream," he said, pausing as they leaned in. "Sometimes it's a badge, a blind eye, a lie you let slide. You don't fight it, you're it." They nodded, some scribbling, others meeting his gaze, and he felt it, a shift, small but real, each word a brick in a new foundation. Atlanta embraced him not as a headline but a voice. Protests faded, replaced by policy talks. His non-profit pushing for cams, oversight, bans on chokeholds. Malik joined him at events, tossing a basketball, grinning when crowds chanted Dad's name. Aisha ran logistics, her strength the spine of it all, her laughter back, brighter than ever. Jamal rebuilt, not just for them but for every kid like Malik, every cop who'd faced the tightrope he walked, the mill fire, the trial, the shivs. They'd forged him, not destroyed him, and he stood taller for it. But peace was fragile. One night, months later, Jamal sat on his porch, rebuilt after the vandalism, Malik asleep inside, Aisha humming in the kitchen. His phone buzzed, a blocked number, and he answered, instinct prickling. Silence at first, then a voice, low, unfamiliar. "You think it's over, Carter? Hensley's locked up, but we're still here." The line cut, leaving a chill deeper than the night's breeze. Jamal stared at the stars, pulse steady but sharp, knowing the fight wasn't done. Allies, shadows, Whoever they were, they'd come and he'd be ready. He stood, stepping inside, locking the door, Aisha's smile grounding him. The call wasn't a threat but a reminder. Truth cost always would. He'd built something, a legacy for Malik, a shield for others, but the system's roots ran deep, and some branches hadn't fallen. Jamal kissed Aisha's forehead, checked. Malik's room, his son's chest rising slow, safe for now. Tomorrow he'd speak again, train more, fight harder. Not for himself, but for every name silenced, every badge misused. He'd survived, not by chance, but by voice, and he'd keep using it, no matter what waited in the dark. Jamal Carter's journey in Black Detective Mistaken for a Suspect by Racist Cop, What Happens Next Will Shock You, reveals raw truths about resilience and justice. His fight against Lieutenant Victor Hensley's corrupt, racist system, false charges, a rigged trial, attacks on his family, shows that prejudice can wear a badge, twisting trust into betrayal. Jamal's story teaches that systemic racism doesn't just harm, it erases, painting a black detective as a criminal to protect the guilty. Yet his refusal to break, even in solitary, proves inner strength can outlast steel bars. He turned pain into purpose, exposing Hensley's cartel and sparking reform, showing one voice can shift a city, even a nation. But the final call, hinting at lingering threats, reminds us justice is fragile. Victories don't erase scars or silence every enemy. Jamal's non-profit, Truth in Blue, underscores that real change demands relentless work, not just headlines. For every Aisha fighting for her husband, every Malik trusting his dad, we learn to stand taller, speak louder, and challenge lies no matter the cost. This isn't just Jamal's lesson, it's ours. To see beyond skin, to question systems, to fight for truth when it's buried. What's your take on Jamal's stand against a racist system? Comment below, hit like, subscribe, and share too. Keep this truth alive. Thank you for joining this journey. Here's to building a world where justice isn't a battle but a right. Stay strong, stay true.